why has there been such a recent uptick in complaints about college football being top-heavy? When has it not been that way? Good question. Very good question. It hasn't. It's always been that way. It's always been a top-heavy sport. I think a lot more emphasis has been placed on this because we're in a playoff era now. Shocker here. Another downside, unforeseen, of the playoff era. This is a sport that was not built like the NFL. Kind of goes back to the question we were just talking about. A lot of people look at the NFL, and that is a league built solely for football. That's it. The teams are not attached to anything else. They're just built to play football. Clemson football was not even around when Clemson University was built. And then, as other teams started to decide we want some extracurricular activities, we want some recreational activities that are associated with the university. Let's have club sports and whatnot. And that grew into what college football is now over decades and decades. Clemson football came to be known as, well, there goes my pen, Clemson football is born. Okay, that's great. Clemson football may have come along 30 years before or after your program came along with your university. And Clemson football may have deep pockets and you may not have deep pockets. They may be located in the South, you may be located in South Dakota. Therefore, they've got more access to players who are athletic and can play the sport. They're in warmer weather. All of this works against you if you're in South Dakota. So you can either do one of two things. You can look around and you can complain about how it's a top-heavy sport and those teams always win, and we need to go about changing everything about the infrastructure of the sport to appease me. Or you could just accept reality and then understand the stupid thing, let's use softer language, the ignorant thing is pretending that this sport is something it's not. So therefore, the smart thing is to understand there are tiers in this sport. This is a very, very class society, and it's closed. Very rarely are you going to see a tier 3 end up being a tier 1. So what we can do, instead of pretending 130 teams are playing the same sport, we can acknowledge reality, and we can say, all right, you got about 15 of them over here, and then there's another bubble of about 30, and then there's another bubble of 40 or 50, and you can measure yourself based on teams in your own bubble. I mean, imagine, I remember how just mind-numbingly ignorant it seemed to me that Boise State built a monster in Boise, Idaho, in the Mountain West or the WAC or whatever they were in. And I was down in the South. I had some fools down there around me, including some in my own social circle, and all they wanted to say was Boise would never win in the SEC. Who in the world cares what they would do in the SEC? They're in Idaho, man. They don't have any advantage. Under Chris Peterson, they had no advantage relative to their competition. In fact, I would argue they were disadvantaged, even in the Mountain West and the WAC, relative to their competition. Some of the teams they play against are in California with access to talent. They're in Idaho. I feel like I need to stress that again. Idaho, okay? And yet they were still winning. That was a miracle to me. That vaulted Chris Peterson right up to the top of my coaching power rankings. If you were properly contextualizing their accomplishments, you would have thought the same thing. But if you were just viewing the sport holistically, and everybody's playing the same league, everybody's playing the same sport, they're playing the same level, as long as you're D1, you're FBS, we're measuring all of you equally, well then no, you didn't appreciate Boise fully. So the reason why it's this way is because it's always been this way. Because college football is not set up like a professional sports league. Accept it. You don't have to draw your joy or despair from whether your team accomplishes something that's meaningful within a structure that should normally be reserved for professional sports. The pro sport structure doesn't work here. Therefore, the grading system that you would use in pro sports, it doesn't work here. You could be so much happier. So many more of us could be so much happier on Saturdays if we viewed the sport that way.